New Mexico is a land of stories, myths, and legends. The unexplained and the unexplored. I'm Chad Brummett, and we are exploring the unique and unusual world of New Mexico Strange. Hello and welcome to this episode of New Mexico Strange. I'm Chad Brummett, and I am excited about today's topic. I mean, it's not like the other topics I'm not excited about, but this is an area that I am not as familiar with. I could talk Bigfoot, Chupacabra, UFOs all day long. One of the areas that I probably can't talk that much about is brujeria, and talking about brujas. But we are fortunate to have Mr. Rob Martinez, who is the State Historian for New Mexico, in today to talk about this topic. Rob, first of all, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart. I'm from here in Albuquerque, but my family's from northern New Mexico. Okay. My late father was from Mora, and my late mom was from Las Vegas, New Mexico. And growing up, we weren't told witch tales, brujeria tales. That's what brujeria is, witchcraft.
Okay.
And brujas are witches, brujos, male witches. But we weren't told witch tales. We were told that there are witches.
Really?
There are
okay.
brujas. We heard these stories as children. We would drive through northern New Mexico, and when we would drive by ABQ, my father would say, "Look, kids, this is a town of brujas." And my grandmother on my mom's side, when she met my father from Mora, she said, "Mora is a town of brujas."
Really?
So these stories are not just tales to scare us. They were squared in the context of reality. This is reality in New Mexico. So it really got me going. You know, as an adult, I started learning about our history, my history, a Spanish history, Mexican history, Native American history in New Mexico. But there was always these stories of brujas in the back of my mind. So when I attended the University of New Mexico in the 1990s, one of my professors told me about a case that was in the archives in Mexico City. It was an Inquisition document dealing with an outbreak of brujeria, witchcraft, and hechicería, sorcery, in Abiquiu in the 1760s.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
So this got me researching witchcraft beliefs, not just in New Mexico, but in Mexico and Spain. And then looking at the Inquisition, how the Catholic Church was the state religion in New Mexico at the time, how they dealt with these beliefs, and how theology and superstition came into play. And it's been a fascinating journey.
What are some of the origins of this of brujeria? Is it based in Native American? Is it based in Spanish culture coming over? Is it a mixture? What are some of the origins of these beliefs?
Belief in witchcraft is universal. You find it in all cultures. This idea that there's a person who can use supernatural means to cause harm to individuals or communities, who can cause bad luck, illness, or even death. So it's not strictly a New Mexican thing or a Catholic thing. So in New Mexico, the origins of our belief in witches is multifaceted. First, let's look at Spain. In Spain, you have deep Catholic roots. You also have Jewish and Muslim belief systems intermingling over 700 years to 1,000 years. Nature religions are present everywhere. And in that Mediterranean world you find in Spain, you have ancient Roman and Greek traditions that filter down into the stories and beliefs that really become part of the major stories when we look at civic histories in those places and religious histories. Witches are intertwined everywhere. in Mexico, you have Aztec, Nahua people, and the different native peoples that were there when the Spanish came in the 1500s. They have their own belief systems. Then when we get to New Mexico, the Puebloan people, the Navajo Dene people, Apache Comanche, they have stories of people who have powers. They invoke spirits to ruin the Creator's beautiful world. So these all blend into the 1600s and 1700s in New Mexico and create something very unique.
Okay, yeah. So it really is an amalgam of different origins, different cultures, different, I don't want to say empires, but thinking of, Greco and Roman origins going really, really far back. You mentioned on a couple of these, that there were beliefs in these people that were able to wreak havoc and bring negative energy. The limited knowledge that I have of brujas is that oftentimes they were also that it was for positive energy as well. Did I imagine that? Did I make that up? Or is this something that kind of has a negative connotation and is a bringer of negative things to a community?
It has a negative connotation, but you're right. There is a gray area, a hazy blur between brujas, witches, hechiceras, sorcerers, and then there's curanderas, folk healers. And folk healers are very much part of our story here in New Mexico, but everywhere you go, Appalachia, France, Germany, Japan, again, it's universal to have a person in the community who uses plants and herbs to help people heal. But they also had the power to cure curses and hexes that could be put on someone by a witch. So sometimes these folks would get caught up in these movements, and magistrates and Catholic priests, Puritan, Protestant ministers would mix up the two. Or they would say, well, if you know how to cure a curse, maybe you're one of them.
Right.
And so you have these stories going back and forth, and it's quite fascinating because we have that here. We have Curanderismo here in New Mexico. You have it. It's very powerful in Mexico too, and all over. In Spain, saints like Santa Teresa de Avila, she's a pretty good Catholic, and yet she went to a curandera to get healed.
Really?
And in New Mexico, we have cases where priests and governors and just the people here, the Hispanic people who were part Spanish, part Mexican Indian, and part native New Mexico Indian, native people mixing, they go to curanderas, very common. So on the one hand, the witch, the bruja, was thought to traffic with the devil, the pact with the devil, the contract, and invoking demonic spirits. The sorcerer, the hechicera, would use plants to poison people, to hurt them, powders to invoke love or hate between people.
Gotcha.
And then the curandera would use plants to heal mental illness, nervous disorders, physical illness, but also curses and hexes.
Wow. What were some of the, growing up, because I'm curious to get to this Inquisition part here in a few minutes, but before we get there, what were some of the stories that you grew up with that, again, this wasn't something that you just tell at Halloween to scare kids, but that you just took as fact? What were some of the stories that you remember growing up, or were there common themes? Were there common ideas in these stories?
Well, there is always a bit of a contradiction. There's a dicho, a saying from Galicia, Spain, and it goes like this. Yo no creo en brujas, pero hay. I don't believe in witches, but they exist. You kind of had that attitude in family stories. So when we would go to Mora as little kids with our parents, our cousins, aunts and uncles, our grandma and grandpa, our grandparents, we all wanted to run to the store down the road and get ice cream and candy. And sometimes they'd say, okay, but be careful.
Right.
Be careful with the trucks and the cars, but also be careful, that old house over there, a bruja lives there. So don't bother that person. And, you had stories like that, like La Llorona. Don't play in the river. Don't go by the river. She might get you. Well, the bruja stories were to keep you from bothering people, but you never knew.
Yeah, and you don't want to find out and
No.
then be on the wrong side of it.
So you just kind of stayed away from that house because it was enough to scare you. My father, Roberto Martinez, he used to tell us about El Sapo, the story of the man from, I think it was the Mora area, or maybe Taos, I can't remember, but he could turn himself into a toad, which was part of the witch lore that was brought from Spain and Europe, that witches could turn themselves into animals, into cats and owls or wolves, like werewolves, you know. And then, you know, there's the just warnings, like if you're walking along a road and you see an owl in the tree, a tecolote or a bujo, they say in Spain. And if you look at it and you say, Mañana vengas por sal. Tomorrow you'll come for salt. And the next day, if somebody knocks on your door and they ask for salt, they're a brujo or a bruja. So you get these stories, you know, that are handed down from generation to generation. And they're very important because they give us some insight into the psyche of our ancestors. Studying the civil side of history is important. The laws, the government, the kings, the presidents, that's important. The governors, we have all that. And of course, religion in New Mexico, Catholicism, very powerful. The Franciscans, the priests that came here. When I was studying in the 1990s at the University of New Mexico, some of my professors were very skeptical. They'd say, you can't study witchcraft. That's in the realm of superstition and folklore and psychology and anthropology, all these different, you know, superstition, different things.
Sure.
But it's turning out that studying witchcraft is very significant, especially the beliefs. Whether we believe it or not is a whole other story, but our ancestors did.
Yeah.
And it shaped their worldview, especially in New Mexico. The santos, the saints, were alive, like regular people just living down the road. They had a very personal relationship with God because we were on the edge of empire. So sometimes you didn't always have a priest to minister sacraments. So we developed this folk religion, folk version of Catholicism with penitentes, santos, and of course, brujas. There could be an angel right around the corner, or an evil spirit, or a bruja. So this is the world that they lived in. So we have to respect that and look at it. That's what I was doing in the 1990s. And now a lot of people are very interested in it, as they should be.
Yeah. Well, and as you said, I think it brings up a good point that, you know, regardless of whether or not you believe in it, it informed our culture. It informed the culture that, you know, of the shoulders of which we now stand on today. So getting a better understanding of that, even just from an objective standpoint, seems that there is definitely merit and there is use for that. Let's dive in a little bit to this this Inquisition information that you came across that happened here in New Mexico. You know, I got in my notes, and our producer and we were talking, was this like the Salem witch trials, but in New Mexico? Was this like the Socorro witch trials, or, you know, something like that?
Kind of, yes.
Okay.
We have to look at the Inquisition as a ecclesiastical court, a church court. The Catholic Church and the state had a marriage during the Spanish Empire in New Mexico. You really couldn't separate the two. Crime against the state was a crime against the church, and vice versa. So the Spanish version of the Inquisition was established in 1479 by the Reyes Católicos, Fernando and Isabel, the Catholic kings. It was to police conversos, people converting from Judaism and Islam to be Catholics. They couldn't touch Jews or Muslims. They didn't have jurisdiction over them. But the converts, the baptized Catholics, yes. And ultimately, it expanded to include any sort of heresy, meaning any teaching that challenged the dogmas of the church or stepped outside of church teachings or Spanish social teachings. Right. So, interestingly enough, I learned that the Inquisition was not that interested in witchcraft. It looked at witchcraft and sorcery as delusion and as superstition. when it got interested was when there was heresy, when there was an attack on the perpetual virginity of Mary, or saying that Christ did not rise from the dead, things like that. Then the Inquisition would get involved, or if a witch entered into a pact with the devil, because that resulted in a renouncing of membership in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
So that's when you see this happening. So what happens in New Mexico is there are many cases of believed witchcraft and sorcery starting in the early 1600s, but none of them rise to the level of involving the Inquisition. The local priests would typically say, this is superstition, this is gossip, these are ignorant people just talking about each other. But in the 1760s, there was an outbreak at Abiquiu, New Mexico, just northwest of Santa Fe. That was a pueblo of hechiceros, a very major part of our story. These were children of war, Native Americans who were not Puebloan, although sometimes Pueblo people got caught in that hechicero system. There was warfare in all directions, Spanish and Pueblo on one side, fighting with Comanche, Navajo, Apache, Hopi people. There were Ute, Kiowa peoples, and they're taking prisoners, killing men, grabbing women and children, selling them back and forth. And in New Mexico, they would be put in households to be turned into Catholics and learn Spanish, to be Hispanicized. But it never went far enough. So these people were marginalized, kind of feared because they talked different, they looked different. And so they were often settled in peripheral towns like Abiquiu, Las Trampas, Truchas, Belén to the south of Albuquerque, and later San Miguel del Vado towards Las Vegas. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of tension in these towns. The priests would come and kind of freak out, actually, at the people they had to minister to. So what happens is the priest at Abiquiu in the 1750s, Fray Juan José Toledo, he writes to the alcalde mayor, the magistrate at Santa Cruz, that there's an outbreak of brujos and brujas, hechiceras in Abiquiu. They're using their evil magic to kill people, maybe even kill the priest that had been there before. It turns out it's a combination of men and women who are vying for power and authority, and it's a mix of witchcraft beliefs from Spain and Mexico, Mexican Indian beliefs mixing with the stories from pueblos and the Hispanic population. And they're practicing their own religions, spiritual practices mixed with Catholicism. There's some heresy in there. The short version is it's problem enough that the priest, he gets the affliction, which is causes problems in the stomach and even death. He goes to a Native American curandera for help. 5 girls are supposedly possessed by evil spirits. He performs exorcisms on them. The document has details of their affliction. They're shaking, they're speaking in different languages, making animal noises, levitating. It's a fascinating document. And then finally the document is sent to the governor, and he thinks it's a problem for the whole province of New Mexico. He has the Henicero Indians arrested, and he sends the case to the Inquisition in Mexico City. The Spanish Inquisition in Spain had been brought to Mexico to deal with supposed conversos, because these people are fleeing, practicing Judaism in secret, and they're leaving Spain, coming to Mexico. So the Inquisition arrives in Mexico in 1571. So the document, the case, it goes to Mexico City, and a lawyer for the Inquisition reviews it, and he responds and says, this is not witchcraft. This is not sorcery. It's the priest's fault. He's not learning their native languages enough to catechize them, to convert them. And so they're doing their own thing, messing with him. And so he says the priests in New Mexico need to learn the native languages so that he has a better grasp on what they're doing and not just blame the devil.
Yeah.
Because the priest there thought he was in a battle with
Sure.
the devil, which was his own perspective that he brought. But also, during the exorcisms, one of the young maidens, the spirit supposedly had accused about 178 people in New Mexico and Sonora of being witches. And during the exorcism, the 178 people were named and described.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's in the document. So the lawyer for the Inquisition responds and says, we are not going to investigate those people for being accused witches or sorcerers, because the accusations came from an evil spirit, from a demon during an exorcism. And the Inquisition does not accept testimony from devils because they are liars.
Wow.
How about that? How about that for a legalistic
I was
loophole?
gonna say, we don't typically hear those in plea agreements these days, or in any sort of hearings that come up. It's interesting to me, and I'm curious if the word outbreak was that what they were, because that almost gives that connotation of it's a virus.
Kind of, yes. It didn't translate exact. I mean, on the front page, it just says acts according to the discovery of sorcerers in the province of New Mexico.
Okay.
Sent by the governor. So, but it is considered an outbreak because the fear was, if this starts to spread from Abiquiu to Taos to Santa Cruz to Santa Fe and to Albuquerque and Isleta and all the pueblos, it could be a problem that could result in a second Pueblo revolt.
Right. Okay.
Because it was not just a spiritual problem, it was a religious and political problem.
Yeah.
And these hechiceros were challenging Spanish church authority in the attack on the priest, and civil authority when it starts to become a problem for the magistrate at Santa Cruz and then the governor at Santa Fe.
Gotcha.
So it has widespread implications for New Mexico and for Mexico City and Nueva España, New Spain to the south.
Today in modern New Mexico, what do we know of brujeria? Is it still practiced? Is it still kind of a mystical thing that we may not know about? What is the modern day bruja or brujo?
Modern day brujas and brujos exist. But it's a different attitude these days. We look at different beliefs and practices in a very egalitarian way now, not just in New Mexico, but in the United States. New Mexico and the Spanish Empire in the 1700s was very different. Catholicism was the state religion. It was illegal to be anything else. But there were different attitudes even back then, to be fair. Some of the religious orders, like the Dominicans, they looked at native religions as being nature religions, maybe like what Adam and Eve believed, but that they were in error and needed correcting. The Franciscans who came to New Mexico, they looked at it as a demonic problem, that the devil had these people in a grip. Nowadays, you have modern Wicca. People practice nature religions. And while there is fear and anxiety still, I mean, whenever I give these talks about brujeria in New Mexico, people always come up to me and say, we've heard these stories. We saw fireballs flying through the air. That's one of the indications of witches, fireballs flying through the air.
Okay.
In the documents, they mention that some of the accused witches would use powders to kill their lovers who had caused them injury, or excite love or hatred, or they would fly from Mexico City to Santa Fe back and forth in an egg. I don't know how. Don't ask me. I don't know if they'd shrink down or they'd get a giant egg. I don't know. But you have these images and people still talk about them.
Yeah.
They're not stuck in documents from the 1700s. They're with us today. But, a more modern view of this type of thing, a way to look at it would be, I think, what we have going on today, shootings. people who go to schools and shoot kids or shoot people in malls or movie theaters. They cause injury to individuals and communities, and they increase anxiety in our society. So
That's a really interesting take on it.
We've shifted views. We don't have an Inquisition anymore,
right?
But we have the IRS, or we have different institutions that scare us a little bit, you know. But the Inquisition was something to be weary of in the 1600s in the Spanish Empire. But, you know, the Protestants had their own version. The 1692 witch trials at Salem on the East Coast, that was not Catholic. That was Puritan. It was Protestant. And they executed people. And they would figure out who was a witch by throwing them in the river. And if they sank, they were not a witch.
Too bad we know that after they're dead. But
exactly. Yeah. So they had their own odd way of dealing with these things. And it tended to be Native Americans in the Spanish realm, or blacks, or people mixed race, mestizos, half Spanish, half Native American, people mixed Native American and black, who were accused. They were considered less Spanish, less Catholic, and therefore they were marginalized and looked at as people doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So the Puritans had their own version of people who might be blacks from the Caribbean practicing voodoo, or their own version of Christianity that was thought impure. So we have those things happening today. We see the word witch hunt thrown around a lot in politics today. So it is still with us. And we still look at people who are different from us, and we want them away from us, and we want to marginalize them and get them out of here, or change them and stop them from doing the things we don't like and make them do the things we like.
Right.
So we have our own modern day versions that are very different, but who knows? In 300 years, people might look at us and say, what were they thinking?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know we got to wrap here. So just very quickly, Rob, if people want to learn more about this topic or learn more about you, where can we go online to do that?
Well, I'm the state historian, so you can contact me. I'm available to talk. I give presentations on brujeria, history of witchcraft and sorcery in New Mexico. There are books. Mark Simmons wrote a great book a few decades ago on witchcraft in the Southwest.
Okay.
And Rick Hendricks and Malcolm Ebright, they have a more scholarly academic book on the witches of Abiquiu. That's the name of the book.
Okay.
My master's thesis can be found in various places like the New Mexico State Library and Zimmerman Library at the University of New Mexico. It's called Fray Juan José Toledo and the Devil in Spanish New Mexico.
Okay.
So there are sources, and it's good to always check different sources, different perspectives. The native peoples of New Mexico, the Puebloan people, Apache, Navajo, I would say go to them, because I want them to tell their version or their stories.
Right. And oftentimes those two sources are not going to line up very, very well, and sometimes they do, but you want to make sure that you get a complete picture.
One person's bruja is another person's curandera.
That's a great way to put it. I couldn't finish this episode any better than with that, Rob. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us. If you want more episodes of New Mexico Strange or any other programming, make sure that you download the KRQE Now app on your Roku, your Fire Stick, your Apple TV. You can also find us at krqe.com. Until next time, I'm Chad Brummett. This has been New Mexico Strange.